From shady bribes to exploiting the poor, Mr. Goodman's built an empire on questionable choices. But how long can he outrun karma? Today we're investigating the crimes that could finally land Mr. Goodman in the poorhouse. Like and subscribe, and let's begin. Alright SML fans, let's talk about Mr. Goodman. We all know he's a grumpy old dude, always on Mario's case about rent. But over the years, he's been way more than just a grumpy landlord. He's turned into a straight up psychopath. This guy is obsessed with money, and he'll do anything to get it. Remember in Jeffy's homework when he threatened to arrest Mario if he didn't homeschool Jeffy? That wasn't about actually helping Jeffy. No, it was all about power and squeezing more cash out of Marvin with those house payments. And it's not just Marvin he picks on. He's like the neighborhood bully, using threats and even violence to get his way. Honestly, when you think about it, poor Marvin.
Ew, poor!
Mr. Goodman is always hounding him for house payments. He's even stolen checks, lottery tickets, and Marvin's driver's license. What a scumbag. Mr. Goodman's greed knows no bounds. He's always scheming to make a quick buck, even if it means screwing people over. Like in Junior's sports drink when he sued Junior and Cody for using a bottle that looked like Prime. He got them fined $20,000. Seriously, who sues kids over something like that? Just plain greedy. And remember the golden nugget? When Jeffy found that rare McDonald's nugget, Mr. Goodman immediately wanted it for himself. He doesn't care about Jeffy or anyone else. He just wants all the valuable stuff for himself. He's like a hoarder, but for money and rare items. Even back in the day, before he became a full-blown financial villain, Mr. Goodman was shady. In Mario the Gangsta, he was a cop who tried to get Mario involved in illegal stuff for money. He's always been a bad dude, but his greed has just gotten worse and worse over time. Ronald McDonald even showed us how messed up Mr. Goodman is. He showed us pictures of Mr. Goodman hoarding cash, trying to kill people for valuable stuff, and doing all sorts of crazy things for money. It's kind of funny, but it's also kind of disturbing. So, Mr. Goodman is a greedy, power-hungry jerk who loves money more than anything. But what if he lost it all? What if he was poor? Would he finally learn his lesson and become a better person? Or would he just become even more desperate and more dangerous? That's what we're going to explore in this video. So let's flip the script for a second. What if the tables turned and Mr. Goodman's precious fortunes vanished? Let's find out how Mr. Goodman would exactly lose all of his dough. If you like this video so far, make sure to like and subscribe for more theory videos, or else I'm going to be poor like Mr. Goodman is about to be. So we know Mr. Goodman is a greedy, power-hungry jerk, but how could someone so obsessed with money actually lose it all? Well, let's be real. This dude is walking on thin ice with all the shady stuff he pulls. It's only a matter of time before karma bites him in the butt, and when it does, it's gonna be epic. Think about all the crimes he's committed. He's a master of bending the rules and exploiting loopholes for his own benefit. Remember Junior sues McDonald's? He totally backed up Ronald's lie about the quarter pounder's weight, even though it was obvious false advertising. That's fraud, plain and simple. And in Jeffy's mad cow disease, he wanted to use a cow with mad cow disease for McDonald's burgers. He doesn't care about health regulations or people getting sick, as long as he gets his greasy, disease-ridden burger profits. That's not just greedy, it's downright dangerous. Mr. Goodman's also a huge hypocrite. He tried to arrest Mario for tax evasion in Jeffy's paper shredder, even though it was just Jeffy's homework that got shredded. But we know Mr. Goodman is probably the biggest tax evader out there in the SML world. He's always hiding money and finding ways to avoid paying his fair share. And let's not forget about all the times he's abused his power. He's admitted to framing innocent people just to fill his prison quota and make more money. And he's falsely arrested Rosalina and other people from the SML neighborhood for accidentally damaging his car multiple times. He's always using his authority to bully people to get what he wants. And he's even a thief. He stole Mario's lottery ticket that one time, hoping to cash in on the winnings for himself, even though he already has millions for himself. His greed has even led him to attempted murder before. So, how does Mr. Goodman lose all of his money? It's simple. He finally gets caught for all of his crimes. Mr. IRS comes knocking for all those unpaid taxes. The lawsuits start piling up from all the people he's wronged, and he ends up facing serious jail time. Goodbye fortune, hello prison jumpsuit. But eventually, he gets out, and now he's poor. So that leads us to the question, how would he act once he's poor? Would he be stuck in his selfish ways, or would he finally have a change of heart? Well, I think I've found tons of evidence that answers just this question. So, what would Mr. Goodman's life be like now? Let's imagine this new life of Goodman. A former billionaire was suddenly stripped of his wealth. No more fancy cars, no more stacks of cash, no more power trips. Instead, he's facing the harsh reality of poverty, a world he's only glimpsed from the privileged position of being a landlord. First off, he'd be struggling to pay his own rent. Remember how Rose ripped into Marvin in Goodman's new life for not having a job? Well, Mr. Goodman would be in the exact same boat, scrambling to make ends meet every month. He might even end up getting evicted from his own apartment. Talk about a taste of his own medicine. Forget about demanding those outrageous house payments from Marvin. Mr. Goodman would be the one working multiple dead-end jobs just to keep a roof over his head. We're talking flipping burgers, cleaning toilets, maybe even dressing up as a giant chicken to hand out flyers. No more lounging around, counting his cash, exploiting other people. He'd be busting his hump just to survive. And say goodbye to those shady bribes and legal loopholes. Without his money, Mr. Goodman wouldn't be able to buy his way out of trouble anymore. Remember how he bragged about his wealth in Brooklyn Guy's tax fraud? Well, Mr. IRS wouldn't be so easily swayed by a poor Mr. Goodman. He'd have to face the consequences of his actions, just like everyone else. No more fancy cars or expensive gadgets either. Mr. Goodman would be stuck riding the bus or walking everywhere. Remember that pricey Apple Vision Pro headset he bought in Goodman's Apple Vision Pro? Yeah, that's a distant memory. He'd be lucky to afford a used flip phone. And forget about hiring other people to do his dirty work. Mr. Goodman wouldn't be able to exploit other people's need for money anymore. The worst part though, Mr. Goodman might even struggle to afford basic necessities like food, clothing, and healthcare. No more fancy dinners, gambling sprees, or, well, you know, those extracurricular activities he enjoys with the ladies of the night, like we've seen in some videos. He'd be living a life of ramen noodles, thrift store clothes, and hoping he doesn't get sick. But then that leaves us. How would he treat other people? Would his personality change? So, Mr. Goodman's lost it all. His fortune's gone, his power's vanished, and he's stuck in the same financial rut as the people he used to bully. But would this humbling experience make him a better person? Don't count on it. A cornered rat is the most dangerous, and a poor Mr. Goodman would likely become even more bitter and twisted. Imagine him watching Marvin, living comfortably in that house Mr. Goodman used to own, or seeing the other SML characters raking in cash from their successful random businesses that start up in every random episode. And now those businesses are actually successful because he could no longer get in the way. Jealousy would eat him alive. He'd be seething with resentment, constantly scheming to get back what he lost, even if it meant resorting to even shadier tactics. He'd have zero respect for authority figures like Judge Poobie. Remember how he used to bribe his way out of trouble all the time? Well, those days are over. A poor Mr. Goodman wouldn't hesitate to tell Judge Poobie exactly what he thinks of him. Consequences be damned. He'd be a rebellious, poor old geezer, spitting in the face of the system that brought him down. And don't expect him to be a good friend or family member. He'd be desperate for cash. He wouldn't hesitate to exploit those closest to him. Remember how he used to take advantage of Chef Pee-Pee's need for money and Chef Pee-Pee quits? Well, he'd be even more ruthless now, pressuring people that are easily exploitable and gullible. He'd be a nightmare customer too. Imagine him snapping at the waitress in Applebee's because he can't afford a decent wine. He'd be taking out his frustrations on everyone around him, blaming the world for his misfortune. Service workers would dread seeing him walk through the door. And the worst part, he might even start preying on vulnerable people like Jeffy and Marvin even more so. A poor Mr. Goodman would be even more likely to manipulate or deceive those who can't defend themselves. He'd be a desperate and dangerous predator. Without his money, Mr. Goodman would constantly be on the lookout for quick cash schemes, even if they were illegal. He might even team up with Ronald McDonald, who also went off the deep end in Jeffy's mad cow disease when he faced financial ruin. Together, they'd be a force of chaos and destruction, leaving a trail of victims in their wake. So yeah, a poor Mr. Goodman wouldn't be a pretty sight. He'd be a bitter, resentful, and exploitative shell of his former self, proving that money might not buy happiness, but it definitely keeps some people from becoming their worst selves. So there you have it. A poor Mr. Goodman would be a whole new level of chaos in the SML world. But what about another SML character? What if there was a dark truth to the character on screen now? Well, click the video on screen to hear about my theory on them right now.